Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing another impromptu video. I wasn't actually planning on doing a video on this movie, especially on my main channel. That seems kind of random. I do review horror movies on my horror channel. I didn't find this to be a horror movie, but I had a lot of thoughts about it, and I thought I would do a video on it because so many of you asked me to talk about it or review it in some way or some capacity, so we're going to talk about it today. And that movie is My Friend Dahmer. I saw this last night and it had kind of a limited release, but luckily it was in a theater that was kind of far, but it was near me. So my friend Sarah and I decided to go and see it. I had really mixed feelings about seeing it because I was a little scared about how they were going to execute it, and I already kind of knew how they were going to execute it based on the trailer. I will link the trailer down below if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's basically a movie about Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, it's based on the graphic novel by the same name by a guy named Durf, aka John Backdurf, who was friends with him in high school and who I believe is portrayed in the actual movie. So a little backstory on Dahmer in case you're not aware of his crimes. He raped, killed, mutilated, and cannibalized 17 young men. He was sentenced to 16 life terms in prison in 1992, and his charges included public intoxication, disorderly conduct, indecent exposure, child molestation, and of course murder. He didn't live long in prison though. He was actually murdered by a fellow inmate in 1994. So I had originally tweeted my thoughts immediately after the movie in the car on the way home, and I had said, just watched My Friend Dahmer and I have mixed feelings. Although it was extremely well done, it creates sympathy for him and we can't forget everything that he's done. And I'll get more into that in a second, but the writer-director Mark Myers actually replied to me with his statement, and he said, "Thanks for seeing it in the cinema. Yes, that's part of what we meant to achieve, to show where he came from based on the nonfiction book and how he fell through the cracks. Doesn't excuse the monster he became or his crimes. It's the story before that story." And what stood out to me about his statement is him saying this is the story before that story, the well-known story that we all know about Jeffrey Dahmer. This is the story before that and what happened leading up to that. When you go into it with that mindset, it is easier to watch. However, I don't think we should necessarily separate the two, because if we do, then we sympathize with Jeffrey Dahmer as a teenager and then we don't when he killed everyone. So separately from that story that we all know, this movie is phenomenal. It's very well done, well acted, well executed. The cinematography is beautiful. All that being said, yes, it definitely portrays Dahmer in a way that makes you sympathize and possibly even empathize with him if you've ever been in a similar situation, which I think is what we were all afraid of with the creation of this movie. I knew I personally would be affected because I want to work with troubled teens, so when I was watching it, what I saw was someone who was struggling and needed help. And that's a scary mindset because we cannot forget what he's done, the choices that he made, regardless of his previous life before murder. Unfortunately, they do have to go hand in hand. If we separate the two, it's not two people we're looking at here. It's one person who, yes, had a very troubled childhood and a rough upbringing, but he made severe horrible choices, and we cannot forget that while we're watching this movie. The director also mentions that he was someone that fell through the cracks, and this is very evident in the movie as well. However, many teens have troubled childhoods and a rough time in high school, and I would also say they too fell through the cracks. However, Jeffrey Dahmer definitely had other things going on, mental illness possibly, and then there's the argument of nature versus nurture. There's a common theme among killers that they often have abuse in their past and stories very similar to Dahmer's. Sometimes their illness is genetic, most times I would say, which I'll get into. Many are probably born without empathy, which that's kind of a given, but mostly I think it's triggered by something in their externally in their lives. I have done a whole video on sociopath versus psychopath. I will link it up here if you haven't seen that. I feel like it's a good background to serial killers. So there was a twin study done that showed that psychopathy was 60% genetic, and this shows that these traits are more so rooted in DNA than they are someone's upbringing. There are actual physical differences in the brains of psychopaths that usually trigger negative emotions such as embarrassment, nervousness, etc., and they feel physical pain but not emotional pain. I will link an article that goes more in depth on all of that down below if you're interested. So back to the movie. That was just a brief little tangent there. Back to the movie. The place that I see this being the most dangerous is Tumblr. I have done a whole video on romanticizing serial killers that I will also link if you haven't heard about this community on Tumblr. brace yourselves. There were definitely moments in this movie that I sympathized with Dahmer. I actually teared up at certain points because I could feel his struggles, and I am not someone who sympathizes with a killer once they have decided to kill. And, you know, honestly, it is hard to remember everything that he's done when you're watching this teen boy just struggle. And it's like a story that is very similar and very familiar to a lot of people. So you don't pair them together when you're watching this movie. I can only imagine young teens watching this movie who already have an obsession with serial killers, specifically Jeffrey Dahmer, and falling more in love with him. Now, a lot of people feel this way because they imagine that if they were alive during that time, that they could be the ones to save them, that they could fix them, that they could love them better. And they believe that they're the only ones that understand them. No, you cannot love someone better. That is not how mental illness works, and that applies to every single mental illness. You will never be the answer to their problems. I'm sorry. Now, if everyone thought reasonably and recognized that this movie is the backstory to a killer that decided to do horrific things, then this movie would be great. However, I get nervous that this movie was made at all because there are people who are going to watch this movie and sympathize with Jeffrey Dahmer and possibly even feel love for him. I'm not exaggerating. There are people out there who are in love with him. Of course, I have to address this. It doesn't help that we have a Disney star that is already well loved, Ross Lynch, playing him. However, I don't think we can necessarily get mad that they chose to cast a conventionally attractive actor, because casting someone who is generally ugly just to avoid people falling for him is a weird concept to me also. So I don't think we can be mad at the actor, we can be mad at the director for casting Ross Lynch. I don't think that is the issue here. I think no matter who was cast in it, there were gonna be people who would probably fall more in love with him. I think we should be able to look past all of that. We should be able to look past the actor and remember, this is not him. That is not Jeffrey Dahmer. Ross Lynch does not equal Jeffrey Dahmer as a teenager. It's not. If you're going to watch this movie, remember the sympathy that you feel towards Jeffrey Dahmer needs to be redirected back to the 17 victims that he killed. It's easy to feel emotional during a movie like this because no one deserves to grow up like that. No one deserves to be bullied or come from a broken home. And it's very sad to see someone grow up like this, and the fact that this movie is a reality, not just with Dahmer, but for so many, makes it even harder. But what's sadder is that the families of the victims get to watch the world sympathize with their son's, their brother's killer. It's okay to feel sad in this situation that this even happened at all, but just remember what the true tragedy is in this situation. I am still on the fence, honestly. These are all my opinions, and I never really gave you guys this hard answer as to whether or not it was good or bad. I don't think it's that black and white. I don't know if it was necessarily made to bring awareness, but it is a very sad story. And that's hard because we don't want to sympathize with a serial killer who had done horrific things. So I don't really know how to feel at this point, even after seeing the movie. I don't really know. You tell me how you feel about it, and if you feel like this is going to be detrimental to the Tumblr community that is in love with serial killers, or if you think it won't be that, it's not that big a deal. I don't know. You tell me down below, and how you feel about Disney star being cast as Jeffrey Dahmer. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this random video. I'll have another video tomorrow, so yeah, you're getting like 3 videos this week. That's pretty exciting. But let me know your thoughts down below, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.